Hello everybody, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis with a 40k review / tactics video. Today we're going to be moving away from army builds and more onto a specific army, and the army in question, as you may not be surprised to notice, is Orks. This is one of my new burner boys. He's just about finished painted now. And what we're going to do in today's video is we're going to talk pros and cons of Orks, what they're good at, what they're not so good at, and then give a bit of an overall review of them, kind of like we did at the end of the Codex Analysis series. And then we're going to talk some army builds you can use. Now, I'm not going to talk specific game tactics because Orks is one of their upsides is that they're so varied. There's so many things you can do with Orks that one generic tactic that I suggest to you won't work for every theme of list, and so we'll do it as army builds and tactics to use those rather than general Ork tactics. So let's jump right into the video with some pros. What do Orks do well? Well, they are very, very numerous and very, very cheap. This means you can get a lot of guys on the board for a very low cost. 30 boys costs around the same as a tactical squad, a little bit more. 20 to 25 boys, probably about the same cost as a tactical squad. And assuming they don't get shot to bits on the way in, will absolutely probably wreck that tactical squad in melee. But that's obviously not how Orks work. They work to absolutely overwhelm. And you can use shooter boys. 20 shooter boys is roughly the same as tactical squad and will generally hold its own pretty well. So they'll do that very well. And with Grots, you can easily block out your army for a very low cost at 3 points per model, 35 points per 10 in a runt herd, which is absolutely fantastic. And this obviously means you get a lot of firepower on the board. Grot blasts are terrible, we know, but they're accurate. Sluggers, pretty terrible, but shooters, get a lot of firepower out of those, and you can bring in big shooters and rocket launchers very, very cheaply. Next thing. They have a lot of flamers. This is only an upside because it's Orks and they are very bad ballistic skill. So having flamers and a fair few blast weapons around means that they can compensate for their terrible ballistic skill by just not needing to use it. Every single character has access to a combi shooter scorcher for 10 points in the range weapon section, meaning that you have access to a lot of flame weapons, which is fantastic. And in terms of blast, there are just a lot of blast weapons knocking about on vehicles and whatnot. The one downside is that if you are forced to jink and you're carrying a flamer or a blast weapon, like somebody on a warbike who then takes a combi shooter scorcher, or perhaps you are forced to go to ground, try and get a shred of a cover save, then you are not going to be able to fire it, because snap firing, if you're pinned as well, is a big problem because you can't use your flamers, but not a major issue. Next thing, RNG. Randomness. Now, some would say randomness is a bad thing, but the way GW had to design these random effects is to be pretty good on average. I mean, flash kits are either AP4 or AP3 at strength 5, which is pretty damn good. Half the time they are killing Marines on 3s, the rest of the time they're killing everything else on 3s and 2s, which is fantastic. And smasher guns, strength 7 AP1 guns, not too bad, or strength 8 perhaps. Zap guns, yes, I give you, they are just objectively worse las cannons, but they have the potential to be better. And this is the main thing that makes the randomness a pro and not a con. While, yes, there are times where it just completely screws you, a la Blitzer Bomber, the average RNG is good, and the good randomness is amazing. Shock attack gun rolling up a double 6, getting a vortex, completely annihilating swathes of the opponent's army. The Blitzer Bomb rolling up a 12 and being able to do extra shooting onto that tank it just dropped a bomb on and then finish it off. Or shooting to the back of the unit it just dropped a massive bomb on, whatever. Or perhaps rolling up AP1 when you shoot at the Terminators, rolling up strength 10 when you shoot at that Land Raider. It's really, really helpful. Next up, we have a lot of variety. This is something I hinted at earlier. Orks can do anything and everything. There are 4 main archetypes I'm going to talk about later in the video, but you can do just about anything you want to do, based around 6 great clans, around just a certain style that you like. Whether you want to go an all ostentatious shooty style like Bad Moons, you want to take a lot of commandos and play Blood Axe with the Red Skull formation, you want to play a very tanky resilient list with lots of Mega Knobs and Dreadnoughts in an approximation of the Canwall list, you just want to go full infantry, very speedy list with lots of bikers and death copters, buggies, flyers, we'll talk about flyers in a minute, and all that sort of thing. You can do that. You want a very close assault list, lots of burner boys. You want to play a very long range list with looters and such. You can do that. There's so much option available. The one thing that I do think is lacking is the option for characters to take rocket packs, which allow you to put them in Stormboy squads and do awesome crazy crap with them. Just my 2 cents on that one. Next up, they have a lot of AP5 and a lot of AP4. There is so much AP4 and 5 in this codex. It's just silly. Big shooters are everywhere. Dakka guns on warbikers. It's so easy to get AP5 guns, and their highest strength means that they'll be scything through weak infantry like guardsmen. Or do Eldar Guardians have a 5+ save? I'm not sure. I haven't really looked into Eldar. And there's AP4 in abundance. Super shooters, scorchers, which I've talked about being everywhere. Just so many places you can get AP4 and AP5, allowing you to cut through infantry. Not a lot of AP3 though, we'll talk about that in a bit. And the other thing they do well, anti-vehicle, specifically anti-non-walker vehicle, and anti-air in a way. The tractor cannon is single-handedly the best anti-air gun in the game because it immediately locks the velocity, meaning if it's in hover mode, it can't move, meaning if it's zooming, it's stuck. It's just going to go absolutely miles, probably off the ball before it gets to do what it wants to do. If it's a flying monstrous creature, it's most likely going to come crashing down, meaning you can absolutely mob it, which is fantabulous. And, well, you're just in a really good spot with tractor cannons. The flyers themselves are a bit weak, particularly at dogfighting, which we'll talk about in a minute, but they're pretty good in their own weird, unique ways, but only against certain opposition. And the tractor cannon makes up for it anyway, so it's not too bad. Right, they're the pros. They're the things Orks do well. Now let's talk cons, negatives. First up, I've banged about this before, lack of invuln saves. There are just no invuln saves in this codex aside from Captain Badrock, the custom force field, and Ghazghkull when he calls Waaagh. Pretty much, that's it. Captain Badrock is a niche character, the custom force field doesn't work in melee, and it's only a 5+ anyway, and Ghazghkull Waaagh only applies to Ghazghkull, which is cool and all, but it's bad. So there is no melee invul on anybody, meaning that your characters are just doomed if they go up against somebody big. Go up against the dude with the power sword, and you don't wear a mega armor, you're dead. Go up against something with a power fist, you're probably dead, especially if you're a big mech. Go up against the dreadnought, you're dead. Go up against a monster creature, you're dead. It's really, really bad. And if they bring anything with instant death, I'm looking at force weapons in particular, you're dead. It's so bad because feel no pain is negated by it, and that's your main get out of jail card by having a pain point score. But even they are hard to come across. So characters need a way to get access to invuls. I agree with you. Meganobs with invuln saves are just objectively better Terminators. Most of the time. They lack the deep strike rule, but they have come with 2 wounds, which is insane. But characters getting in a 4, 5+ invuln would be absolutely fine. So it needs to be maybe for 10 points and then a bigger one as a relic, like the Super Cyborg. They missed a trick with that. Or the Mega Force Field actually applying to melee. They really missed a trick with that. Had they given those as perma invuls, or just given invuls at all, would have been fantastic. Second up, the flyers. I've hinted at this earlier, they suck. The Dakka Jet is terrible at dogfighting because its guns are strength 6, meaning it's glancing the good flyers and penning on 6s against the average and bad ones, and its armor 10, meaning it dies instantly to anything that knows how to dogfight. Assault cannons, dead. Autocannons, dead. Lance cannons, dead. Hades autocannon, dead. Vector strikes, dead. It's so easy to kill, or at the very least forced into jinking when it becomes a lot worse. And with a flyboss special rule, well, you might think that's really useful. The fact that you're going to be jinking every 5 seconds means that it's not going to come into play at all. Burner Bomber, it's good. It can't dogfight, meaning you have to basically drop its bombs and then run and jink. Because when you're jinking, I don't know if you can bomb, which would be a real nightmare. And you certainly can't fire your missiles while jinking because they're blast weapons. So you're just screwed. And they don't kill Marines, which is a big thing that I have a problem with. And the Blitzer Bomber, bad randomness. Yes, its good result is more often good than its bad result, but the good result doesn't do that much against Marines, and only against the lightly rear-armoured vehicles does it actually do anything anyway, or against infantry, but they generally have cover saves. And it, like the other flyers, dies instantly, and it can even kill itself, which is just amazing, isn't it? Moving on, this is one I'm debating on, and that's the Psychic. Because the Weird Boy itself is not terrible. The Orc discipline is okay. Frazzle gives you some AP3, which is direly lacking in this book. You have Edbanger, which could be useful against some armies. Warpath, which is great if you're hoarding up. You have Here We Go. No, sorry, Dead Jump. It used to be called Here We Go, where you can teleport, which is kind of cool. You have Da Crunch, which if it was AP3 would be ridiculous. And you have Zap, no, Kill Bolt, which is kind of useful, and Power Vomit, which is really, really nice if you can pull it off. But there's a lot of Warp Charge 2 powers in the discipline. You don't have many power dice because while you get the extra 1 from channeling through being around 10 Orks, it's still not great, and you are locked into a bad save. You can't have heavy armor on Weird Boys. They don't give themselves invulns. You have to have a Pain Boy in the squad to even stand a chance, which sucks, but hey, what can you do? And the main issue I have is the fact that HQ slots are so valuable in Orks. Most Ork armies will run a Warboss, so they have the option to Waaagh and to get someone who can actually be a survivable warlord, unless they're running a certain type of list. You need Pain Boys, and generally you want custom force field mechs, meaning you're running Ork Horde detachment. If you're running 2 combined arms, you can get a Weird Boy in, but if you're running Ork Horde, you generally don't have the space to do so. But hey, moving on, AP3. Now, I've talked a little bit or hinted at the fact that we don't have much AP3. AP3 guns are very hard to come by in this book. Flash kits have a 50-50 chance of being AP3, and that's cool, but they're in heavy support. Battle wagons and looted wagons, one of which is a data sheet, do pack some AP3 guns, but they're in heavy support, which is already a bit clustered. You have custom mega cannons, which are quite good, but they're small blasts, they get hot, and they're heavy support. And outside of heavy support, you have power claws. And that's it. Pretty much. You have rocket launchers, which are very, very inaccurate because your Orcs ability skill 2, they only hit 1/3 of the time, and you have power claws. And you have no power weapon. All I ask is that the power weapon comes into the Orc. The big chopper is fine for mauling through a bunch of dudes. Strength 7, AP 5 is absolutely fine on a Warboss. But I'll take Strength 5, AP 3 power weapon, or Strength 6 as it would be. I'm absolutely fine to take it because if that's in there, because the Warboss is initiative 4, he stands a chance of, in a fight with a sergeant, to actually just kill him. To just go through him really quickly. And because his strength is still high enough that he'll be wounding on 2s on the charge, it doesn't make much difference. I'd take a 15-point power weapon, and then I'll move on. And on knobs, it's not as good, but there's a lot of sergeants who are AP or initiative 3, and you can go at the same time as them. So if they're packing a power sword and cut your knob down by getting lucky, then that's all well and good. And it gives you a chance to just crack those Marines. It's still relatively easy. You're wounding on 3s. And against anything that's slow, I'm looking at Tau. I'm looking at Tau particularly because they're really slow. Things like the Onega Gauntlet, which is strikes at strength 10, that will beat you if you don't have a power weapon. If you do have a power weapon and not power claw, you'll be able to strike. Little things. But yeah, AP3 is really, really lacking. At least reliable AP3, because flash kits are obviously random. Custom mega cannons get hot, and the pie plates have a tendency to scatter, and you have don't press dat as well on looted wagons, which could just completely screw you. Next up, leadership. All leadership is bad, and I'll accept that. Leadership 7 is fine. If you're willing to run leadership 7 dudes, that's fine. But please, can we make sergeants leadership 8, please? Can we make knobs leadership 8? And while we're at it, can we bump all the characters up by 1 point? So Warbosses and Gazgul go to 10, Big Mechs go to 9, Pain Boys go to 9, just so we have a chance to not fail morale checks. Now, I will concede that because of mob rule, running away is not a big issue. It doesn't happen all that often. But killing my own dudes just because I have a terrible stat, that's not fair. That's like saying to Necrons, oh, your Necrons have bad initiative. Here, make them all take initiative tests. And if anybody fails, then you're in trouble. That's not fair. And because there's so much pinning in the game, yes, again, mob rule gets around the issue, but it's so easy to force multiple morale checks on one unit at once. Things like Dark Eldar, things like Space Marine Scouts with sniper rifles, anything like that, things with, there's a Harlequin thing that gives you -2 leadership, and then they can use Mirror of Minds. Oh my god, that power is so powerful against Orcs. It basically, focus Witchfire, roll up financial leadership, the Shadow Seer wins, you take a wound. Keep going until you succeed, meaning that basically kill your character. Yeah, that's not fun either. Next up, Walkers and Monsters. Walkers is a terrible matchup for the simple reason of you're forced to use power claws to kill them. Orc boys cannot carry crack grenades, meaning you have no way to just glance them to death. Looters hit on 5s, glance on 5s, meaning that you need 9 shots to even take 1 hull point off. And that means you do 27 shots, meaning a 9-man squad firing at full power. But it's not reliable. And yes, you have things knocking them out, but they're very often single shot, like custom mega blasters, which would be really good at handling them, but they're not that common. And smasher guns. which are great and all, but sometimes, you know, you'll just roll up that strength 5 and you can't do anything. Because, well, that's what happens with the bad RNG. But often you'll come up with 7 or 8, which hitting on 4s, glancing on 4s and 5s, still not great. It's still not great. So killing walkers at range is difficult, and killing them in melee is harder, because your power claw is hitting on 4s, glancing on 4s. 3s if you charge, and you have 3 or 4 attacks, meaning it will take you 3 rounds to kill a dreadnought. Meanwhile, it's butchering through your boys, probably killed a few of its obligatory heavy flamer on Overwatch, and then you're taking morale checks at negative modifiers, and then you'll be killing more guys, speeding up the demise of your squad, meaning that when you get through that dreadnought, because you generally do, your squad is just nothing. There's nothing left. It can't really do anything apart from just run and hide on an objective or something, which is fine, but it's not great. And monstrous creatures, even worse. They often pack 3+ saves, or even 2+ saves in case of things like Riptides, meaning that killing them at range is a nightmare. I've already talked about the lack of AP3 in this book. Your boys can wound them in melee on 6s, which is something. I'll give you that something. And the power claws are wounding on 2s in 99% of cases. The one exception is the Wraith Knight. But they often have feel no pain, which they'll always get. They often have invulns against the power claws, which they'll obviously always get. And with their good armor saves and being wounded on 6s, you will need to go through so many attacks to kill them, and they fight back a little bit better than Dreadnought does. Often they pack 4 or 5 or 6 attacks rather than the 3 that a Dreadnought often has. And a good weapon skill. And if they go to smash, they can kill any Killer Can or Death Dread that comes stomping in to try and help, which is just a nightmare. Because you're slow, you never get a chance to get through with it, unless it's card effects. Card effects are the exception because they're unwieldy. So killing monsters is a bit of a problem. It's not as bad because you can shoot them with more stuff. Like your strength 5 stuff works really, really well against them by forcing lots and lots of saves. But you just don't have enough. And when you get to melee, they're just going to tarp hit you forever. And finally, the saturation of the heavy support slot. There are so many good heavy support units, and normally I'd be singing the praises from the rooftops. But they're all in heavy support. Excuse me one moment. Right, so what was I saying? Saturation of heavy support. As I was saying, all the units that are good in this codex, with a few exceptions, are heavy support units. There are so many good heavy support units, it's not funny. You have mech guns, which are amazing. Death Dreads, Killer Cans, Gorkanauts and Morkanauts, Flash Gits, Looter Wagons, Battle Wagons, Flash Gits. Well, I may have said Flash Gits twice there. Did I say Flash Gits twice there? I might have done. But there are so many good heavy support units that it's really hard to find space for all of them. I want to run an army that runs lots of Killer Cans and Death Dreads because I think it's a really cool concept. I want to run a Dread mob at the end of the day, but without the 2 Gorkanauts because, well, I don't like the models that much. And to do that, I'll need multiple combined arms attachments, especially if I then want the mech guns that I swear by as my fire support. I just bought a box of looters that just sat over there, and I really want to use those. And there's just not enough room. All that needs to happen is to move Death Dreads and looters out into elites. Looters should never have left elites, where they were the best elite unit, but at least they weren't competing with all the best units. And Death Dreads, well, all other dreadnoughts as a rule generally belong in elites. Look at Space Marines. Most of their dreadnoughts are elite. I think there are a couple of exceptions, but why not? It just seems the most logical place to put them. If you don't want to move Death Dreads because you think they're too strong for elites, move Killer Cans, for crying out loud. I mean, they're probably less heavy than the Death Dread. Just a thought. And that's my main gripe, is that there's so much in heavy support that there's not enough room for everything. But I can't really complain about it too much. So overall, Orks are a lot of fun, and there's a lot of variety. You can do anything you want with them. But there are some very common weaknesses across a lot of meta lists if you want to play them competitively. So Marines are a big weakness because there's not a lot of AP3. Monsters and multi-wound stuff, like all the stuff I said about monsters creatures applies to things like Blood Crushers of Khorne. It applies to Wraithguard because they've got a really high toughness. I mean, they only have 1 wound, but still a toughness 6. They're really hard to get rid of. All those sorts of units are an absolute bloody nightmare. And that's a really big problem. And there is still the potential for that randomness to completely destroy you. I know I said it's a good thing, and it is a good thing, but it can destroy you. Right, so let's move on and we'll talk about some different archetypes, some different thematic lists you can try. Now, of course, you can change these up however you see fit, or you could do something completely different. I ran into an all grot list the other day, which ran 2 blocks of grots as its troops and ran killer cans and mech guns as its other stuff, and the only orcs it had was a squad of looters and a warboss. That was the only orc in the codex, in the book list thingy. You know what I mean? So you can do anything you want with them. So let's talk about some archetypes, shall we? First up, Horde, the classic orc list. This runs on the idea of there's too many of them. Target saturation, too many targets, all that sort of thing. Completely confuse the living crap out of your opponent. The sight of 180 angry orcs, if you max out your troop session, rushing at your face, is going to scare the bejesus out of anybody. Because they just don't have enough guns to deal with them. The issue you'll have is terrain. Going through difficult terrain will slow you down a lot, and you'll be forced to run. But that's not a bad thing, your guns are short ranged anyway, and if you run them as shooter boys, the firepower you put out on the way in is scary as hell. And usually, you have enough numbers to hit hard enough at ranger and melee. Yes, you will lose a lot of dudes. Trust me on this. Because you will not have the points to pay for heavy armor unless you fancy spending nearly 2,000 points on your troop section or a bit more, you will lose a lot of guys to shooting, unless you're hugging cover or running custom force fields, at which point you lose a few less and pain boys might save a few more. But you'll generally have enough numbers left in most cases to get through, as sluggers or shooters. But this list is completely wrecked by pie plates and flamers. Anything with Ignores cover ruins your day. Anything with strength 8 to take out your feel no pain ruins your day. Anything like that just will make you have a horrible time. Beam powers. Beam powers are actually really quite scary. Nova powers, if a Psyker drops in from a drop pod and then casts Sunburst, oh my god, you're in trouble. And if you get drop podded with flamers, you're going to have to sacrifice a squad to wreck them, and you will lose a lot of guys doing it. But the other thing it has is it needs heavy fire support. Yes, you have rocket launchers, but I've talked about the fact that your ability skill is terrible, so rocket launchers aren't that good. You need things like looters and mech guns to give you fire support, or you just will not be able to silence their big threats. Things like commandos, tank busters in trucks can work really well at stopping this. Next up is something that I'm really hoping to experiment with. I've talked a little bit earlier about the can wall. This obsoletes everything that's less than strength 5. Everything, because the killer cans are armor 11. They make the wall. You have 10 or 15 killer cans across the front and be like, bruh, you want to shoot me? Oh, you got bolters. Sorry, no can do. And it has a variety of weapons to cover for different enemies. So you have Grotzukas if you're facing a guard army. You have Scorchers if you're facing something with lots of cover saves. You have rocket launchers, which are actually kind of accurate because your ability skill 3. Big shooters, custom mega blasters, and of course you have the can claw. And it also gives good cover saves to any infantry that decide to shoot that are behind killer cans. You'll get at least a 5+ cover save if they can see them at all. But, and it's a big but, cans are completely wrecked by crack grenades. If you're fighting marines or anything that can take crack grenades, your killer cans cannot go into melee because they'll die. They're too slow because they're initiative 2 and will die to crack grenades every single time. And you need supporting infantry to do a lot of the melee work for you as a result. The models you put behind you might be tempted to use as shooter boys. Let the can soak up the fire and then let them drop back. Let the shooter boys rush through, shoot the bejesus out of everybody, and then provide cover for the cans as they do the grisly shooting work. But you need them as sluggers, generally, in my experience, because you need them to hit really, really hard in the face. And while the shooters can do it, they have 1 less attack. And when there's a lot of them, that makes a big, big difference. You'll also need to invest in a custom force field mech or Morkanaut to protect the killer cans. Morkanauts work best because they have a wider aura, but mechs will work too. And you can't run a full-size 15 wall as reliably because of cowardly grots, meaning you require a depth dread. This takes up 1 heavy support slot. I've already talked about my issue with heavy support, and that means your wall gets a lot smaller. You will also need to protect that depth dread with everything you've got. So putting 2 cans in front of the depth dread at the back of your little arrow formation, I think you'd deploy it. So if this is my enemy gun line, I'd deploy them like that. And the depth dread anchors it. So these guys die first, meaning that these guys that check for got morale, the depth dread is right there. And then the infantry just files in behind. And again, you'll need fire support, but heavy support is full. And you'll probably want some rapid response stuff, but that's up to you. Next up, Speed Freaks. This was my old classic list. I used to run this a ton. Got a lot worse because they took out Waaagh Gutsmack. Can't take bikes as troops anymore, which sucks. It's very intimidating. The fact that an army can be 18 inches away from killing you on turn 1 is insanely scary, because with the high speed of bikers and turbo boost, you can get right up in the face very, very quickly. And it can scare an opponent because they just can't deal with them. Plus, if you're a biker, you have a 3+ jink when you turbo boost because of the exhaust cloud special rule, which is really hard to get rid of. Getting rid of toughness 5 Space Marines, for crying out loud, which is great. It's great, I tell you. Stick a pain boy in that squad and you're set. No bikers, fine by me. And it's got great anti-infantry firepower. They're all packing strength 5 B5 twin-linked guns. The twin-linked is the important bit, meaning that guardsmen are just dead. Tau are taking a butt ton of saves because they're winning on 2s. Even Marines have to take a lot of saves, and they'll threaten light vehicles very, very nicely. But they're just Ork boys with toughness 5 and a 4+ save, which means that when they get to melee, they don't hit all that hard, and the squads aren't as large as in Horde. Plus, the troops that you take will be boys in trucks to fit the theme, meaning that their max size is 12, and they won't hit very hard either, which is a bit of an issue. So you'll have to run them as harassment units, which is kind of not all that fun because you don't get to crump much stuff. You have power claws, but they don't carry all that much. You lack anti-tank. Your only anti-tank option is Deathcopters and war buggies, which takes away from the bikers that you would generally comprise as the core of the army. The only way to get around this is to take knob bikers and then 1 squad of regular bikers. That way you have more bikes on the ground, and then use the Deathcopters and war buggies as support. You won't have space for flyers, but that doesn't matter because, as I said earlier, the flyers kind of suck. And the Deathcopters and war buggies will have to have twin-linked rocket launchers. Must remind you of that. Or possibly custom Mega Blasters, but they're not twin-linked. And many units are not that resilient. Deathcopters, 2 wounds, toughness 5, 4+ save, jink, pretty good, but overwhelming firepower takes them out pretty easily. And in melee, they suck because you can't hit and run away because your initiative is 2. War buggies, armor 10 all round. Trucks, armor 10 all round, both open topped, very easy to kill. Boys, 12-man squads die quite quickly, even with heavy armor. And bikers, without the 3+ jink, are just boys in heavy armor with toughness 5. And while that seems good, again, weight of shots, weight of attacks will eventually bring them down. And anybody that packs a power maul, you're just dead. You're dead on 3s. Not fun. But the Speed Freak list is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed playing it. And if you want to run the Forge World Warboss on a warbike that unlocks bikes as troops again, this list can work incredibly well. Finally, we have the Castle list, the gun line, or the Daka list, as the Orks would probably say. This absolutely wrecks infantry and light vehicles. Shooter boys as troops, looters, flash gits, tank busters, maybe burner boys. You can do so much damage. So much damage to infantry. They're forced to go to ground, get into cover, and slow them down, and you're in a really good spot. Marines, only thing that can walk through that because looters are AP4 for no reason. And that means that they have a chance of getting through, but again, weight of shots, lots of wounds, brings them down eventually. The custom force field becomes insanely effective because if you're castling up, you are in a very small space. So 2 custom force field Big Macs will basically just save your ass so much. But, and there's a few buts with this one. First off is the standard castle weakness. Tactical objectives. You're not very maneuverable at all. You can't go anywhere. If you want to run this thing properly, you'll be behind Aegis defense lines, fortifications. It just won't be a fun time for you. Your range is shorter. This is a big one. Imperial Guard, minimum range 24. Orks, minimum range 18 on things. And their crack missiles, 24 inches as compared to 48. The only thing with good range is the looters, really, and big shooters up to a degree, which is not great. Apart from the Aegis go to ground save, your saves are terrible. You have the custom force field, and you have Feel No Pain occasionally, and unless you're on the Aegis defense line, your cover save is not that good either. 5+ is the generally best save you'll get, meaning you'll die very, very fast. Extremely weak to flamers, standard thing for castle, but because armor saves are bad, it's even worse. And you will likely need 2 detachments to fit the heavy supports you want. Because of so many units being good in heavy support, looter wagons especially, I'm looking at looters, I'm looking at flash gits for this type of list. You can also add in battle wagons to there. You're getting mech guns particularly, that's 5. You need 2 combined arms attachments to fit all that in, or you're going to have to run Unbound, where you get them even worse in objective gains because you're going to be overscored by their troops. Not fun, but it's a very interesting experiment list. It's something you could try. It might not work, but it could be amazing. So there you go. Those are your main archetypes. Now, how does it work best? Generally when you mash it all together. So a can wall covering Horde with some speed flankers and then some Dakka support is great. The issue with that list is that you're fighting heavy support slots again, and it's not that handy. So what I suggest is you either run a combo of 3, any 3, but can wall and Dakka can't go together because the reliance on the killer cans means that there's no room for heavy support unless you're running a big game and doing double CAD, meaning you can do it. So if you want to do double CAD, combined arms attachments, and go, one side is can wall, one side is my Dakka list, you can do it. But if you only want to run one detachment, not going to work all that well. Horde works fine, and if it's covered by Dakka or shielded by can wall, it's amazing, and the speed cover means that you've got some maneuverability to threaten the entire board. But the main message for Orks, have fun. If you lose, have a laugh while you lose. If you win, well, just rejoice in the fact that you finally got to give somebody a crumping, because it can take absolutely ages before you can pull it off. So that will wrap up today's video. I hope you found it useful and you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did. Leave any comments down below and make sure to subscribe. Time of recording, we are very close to 500 subscribers and I'm really excited to get there. So thank you very much for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again.